Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's astrological report for April 15 through April 21 of 2025. Hope you're doing well. So this week we have a lot of big changes taking place up in the sky. I think we're going to see a lot of changes here in the world, and we're going to see it even more so by next week. But this is the week where it all begins to change, and that's because today we have Mercury reaching the last critical degree of Pisces for the final time within this cycle. And by tonight, Mercury will ingress back into Aries, back on the world point for the final time here. But it's a pretty big change because Mercury will be conjunct Neptune. And we've never had that before because last time Mercury was at zero Aries back and forth in this retrograde, Neptune was still in Pisces. So this is something very new that we're coming into this week with the mind, with our thoughts. We're ending these old stories and ideas of the past, coming into new territory with the way we're thinking and perceiving the self in the world. I'll talk more about that, but that's a pretty big change right there. And of course, important communications and information happening this week on the world stage as well. Now, the other big change is that we have Mars also at this last critical degree of Cancer for the final time. Mars is a little bit slower than Mercury, so it's going to take a little bit of time here to change. It's going to be within the next few days. It looks like by April 17, Mars re-enters Leo here. Now, Mars is still in its retrograde shadow as well, but this is beginning to be a big turning point. The true turning point will be by next week when Mars reaches that opposition with Pluto, but the Sun is going to get in on that as well. So we'll talk about that at the end of this report. But still, a pretty big change for action and passion and what drives us. And Mars is in the lead of everything. You know, all these planets are moving counterclockwise. And it's almost like Mars had to go through this retrograde to slow down and wait for everything else to catch up with it in a sense, or kind of waiting for this time period that's coming up to be moving forward in big new ways, including military operations in new ways, and just generally with what life is talking about. It's kind of like we had to wait for something until it was ready, and now it's beginning to be ready, and we're going to start moving forward in really powerful ways. So that's going to increase the passion and the drama and the action. And again, that's coming up in a couple days. And then we're going to have the other big change is the big change of season this week. The sun leaves Aries and ingresses Taurus. And as the sun is in Taurus, it will be ruled by this exalted Venus. It's just that Venus is behind everything. It's the last planet versus Mars being the first planet here. But Venus is still very powerful. Plus, it just stationed direct. So it's very slow still. And it is next to Saturn. You have to keep that in mind. You know, like I said before in my other reports, Venus is next to Saturn all of April. So we still have, you know, the next couple of weeks of kind of tough love, and also things that we're not getting everything we want instantly within this phase. This is about long-term value and making commitments. But now that we've had that full moon ruled by Venus and Venus is direct, now this next couple weeks is a great time to be making commitments for your future, whether that be relationship commitments or if you need to buy a big ticket item, you know, and this is kind of the 2 weeks we're waiting for, where something is becoming more settled. Now it can go either way too. This is also the 2 weeks where people need to decide if they don't want to be committed to something or if they're letting go of things of the past as well. So it's kind of that vibe of both, depending on the person, if it applies to the person, making commitments or letting go of commitments. But it's still a great time to be looking at things of value, and the sun will be putting a spotlight on that as we come into Taurus season. So we have that going on. So those are 3 big sign changes, which usually changes the overall vibes for the world and how people are feeling and what they're doing. All right, so we have that. And then as Mars gets back to Leo here, it's forming a trine to that Neptune as well. In fact, Mercury and Neptune from this new position. So a fire alignment is about to come in versus all this water that's still a lot, you know, kind of passive and behind the scenes still. So things are about to change gears as well. I'll talk about the meaning of that more as I'm going through the report. And let's see, we have by next Sunday, we have a lot going on Sunday. It starts out pretty smooth and easy, and then it turns into a little bit of a challenge, it looks like. But we do have Venus making a sextile to Uranus, and that's kind of been in play already for a while. It's just perfecting by Sunday. So looking at these values in alternative ways, stepping outside the box from what's normal, looking at our preferences, and I'll get more into it, but we have an outlet for changes about money and resources in good ways here. And then we have Mercury making the final sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. It's kind of that final aspect of mental empowerment and the transformation to our thoughts and ideas and communications and information that's going to start coming out in new ways. So Mercury, once Mercury gets past that, Neptune and Mars is trying it, and Mercury sextile Pluto, I think even the media should start to get a little better compared to where they've been for a while. So that's good. All right, so then, however, we have the Sun making the square to Mars. So the Sun in Taurus will square that Mars in Leo, plus the Sun will have to build up to the square to Pluto by next week as well. So it's going to be a T-square to the Sun, Pluto, and Mars. That's going to be a pretty intense aspect by next week for the world. Also military stuff and other conflict that could be at a big turning point. So a lot more tension does come in, it looks like. Plus we enter the last quarter moon square the Sun on Sunday night. So a little bit of a challenge that does come in for Sunday night. And then it looks like we also have this pretty rare event by next Monday, April 21st, Saturn, North Node come together for the first time in this way in decades. So in this sign. So North Node Saturn, destiny is pointing towards Saturn, structure, building, the hard life. You got to put in some work, some effort. I'll talk more about it, but it's a serious time. Destiny is pointing towards Saturn. It's a very, very serious time for the world and what's being structured and built at this time. So that's the main aspects. Of course, you can find all these written out in the description below for you. Also, there's a link if you want to buy a personal report from me. I am booked up all of April, the first half of May. So if you want to get on my work list for second half of May, follow that link. All right, so let's get into the week ahead here. So just looking at the chart, like I said, Venus is the last planet, besides Pluto here, but the temporary planets, the quick planets, let's say, the inner planets. Venus is the last one. And this Mars, again, I feel like it had to slow down and go through that retrograde to go back and take care of stuff in the Cancerian way of foundational things for life and safety, security things. But it's almost like this Mars did have to wait on things to kind of be ready and catch up before Mars can really move forward in this more dramatic way that's about to happen. So Venus is very slow still. And like I said, it's going to be a couple weeks with this Venus-Saturn. So just know that you can't have, I'm not saying that it can't, there can be exceptions on individual levels, but generally speaking, Venus next to Saturn, this is for long-term value. It's not about getting everything you want immediately this week and even next week. So just be patient with all that and know that what you're doing could have an effect on your long-term future around money and relationships. And like I said before, with Venus now direct off of that full moon, it's a good time to be looking at your commitments. If you need to make big purchase items, big ticket items, now it's a better time to do it. I still like it because Venus is exalted, and plus as that Sun comes into Taurus, it's going to be ruled by that exalted Venus. So it's still a good time to be making financial commitments and decisions about things. And it can also be on relationship levels, like I've said over and over in all these reports. This is kind of the last 2 weeks of looking at important relationships. Is this something for the future, or do you need to let go and release it? It basically can go either way depending on the individual, if it even applies to the person at all. So money and relationships, very serious, very important. And then deals being made on the world stage. This is all about nations and doing deals that are serious and long-term stuff trying to be worked out here. So basically, by the time Venus gets back to the world point with Neptune, you're going to really see that the world has gone through some pretty big changes, some new deals, and a new structure in place by that point. And then when Saturn gets there by May, it's pretty much done in the short term of kind of all the most difficult stuff we've been dealing with is all this Pisces, so one more planet out of that, and then we'll just have Venus that has to get out of there, and then finally Saturn. So we still have some more tough stuff here behind the scenes. It's not just easy, but today we have the moon here at the end of Scorpio forming a grand trine to that Mercury and Mars by tonight. So there's a lot of trines for the rest of today. Actually, lunar trines emotionally and circumstances can be flowing, but everything is still watery for now. It's about to turn into more fire, of course, like I said, with these changes coming. But for now, for today, it's pretty watery, still passive behind the scenes, still kind of inward. But emotions are flowing with everything else for the most part. But just looking at the chart here, there's a lot of different aspects that are happening right now. So it's all over the place. There's difficulty, there's easiness, there's adjustments that have to be made. Even this finger of God is being triggered tonight as well to the sun. So a fateful day and a lot of kind of all over the place with the energy, basically. All right, now let's see. That's the gist. So the moon is going to be waning through the rest of Scorpio. It's going to ingress Sagittarius by tonight, be waning through Sagittarius the next 2.5 days. Then the moon will be waning through Capricorn for 2.5 days. And finally, it'll ingress Aquarius in conjunct Pluto by this weekend into next week. All right, so the circumstances this week after we get past Scorpio, it's all about Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius. And these are the signs that deal with a lot of government stuff and world stuff and politics and culture and all that, those three signs. So that's where the majority of the circumstances will be moving through. Just check your chart and see where those signs are. That's where the temporary energy will be. All right, so let's go through this chart day by day, starting here on Tuesday, April 15 here. Let me align this, the hour. So currently the moon is at 25 degrees as I'm making this, aligning with, again, Venus, Saturn, the North Node, and Mercury and Mars, all today through tonight. So by this point, the next aspect, we've already just had the moon in conjunct to the sun, like I said, with that finger of God. It's in place for the first half of today. So pointing towards the sun, if you have a personal planet at 26 degrees, well, the exalted sun is shining a light on that today. There's also healing that needs to take place in this area because Chiron will be moving through here this year and next year. But there could be something fateful if you do have a personal planet at 26 Aries. Just pay attention to what happens today. Maybe nothing. You never know with these in conjunctions. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Or this can be pointing towards something fateful under the surface that we don't even recognize immediately, and it plays out or it shows its results later on. That can be the case too. But basically, we have to make some sort of an adjustment between our emotional needs today, our feelings of things, versus where the spotlight and the focus is at, which is in Aries, about the self and freedom and independence, being brave and courageous and kind of needing to start new things. But this sun, exalted, is being ruled by this debilitated Mars at the final critical degree today. So what's interesting is when Mars ingresses Leo, there's going to be a short little time where the sun will be ruled by this Mars now in a stronger position. But then the sun will ingress Taurus and be in conflict with Mars by next week. So there's still this tension and this something is about to pop off here. Most likely it's either this week or next week that will lead to a big turning point. So there is conflict, there is tension building up, and yet there's a lot of smooth things. The smooth energy today is basically the more emotional, the feelings of things, intuition, being more private or inward, wanting to be in your own world, doing your own thing. But again, the sun is focused on something more outward, and the moon is more private in Scorpio. Emotions and feelings want to be more controlled. But there's still a lot of outlets to be working with this today. So then the moon is aligned with the nodes of fate today as well. So it's a fateful day on multiple levels. Whatever happens could have a long-term effect on the future for good or bad. This is all taking place the second half of the day here. But things that you're seeing, that you're hearing, that you feel, they could just be shaping your future in some way. And then the moon aligns with Mars and the Mercury Grand Trine after the nodes of fate. And that comes in by this evening and Tuesday night here. So 3 planets, including the moon here. I call the moon a planet. But the moon, 29, Scorpio, Mercury, almost at the very end here, 29, Pisces, Mars, 29, Cancer. So a water grand trine between the mood and the feelings and the needs to the mind and communications and thoughts and ideas to the need for action intuitively. But it's still passive in this way until everything changes a little bit. So even though Mercury is also in alignment with Mars since, the last couple of days, that's also kind of this intuitiveness on what we want to do and a drive or a passion or an instinct about how to take action with things. Our thoughts are in good alignment with our drive and our passion, generally speaking. And now the mood connects very nice with that as well. So interesting grand trine. I would say if you do have a personal planet at 29 in the water signs, then you're wrapped up into this in some big way too. And you have an opportunity, you have support from other planets to your planet, whatever that is, to do something. All right. And then we see that the moon will change signs right after that and ingress Sagittarius. So it's a pretty big mood change by tonight. Moon coming into Sagittarius. Now this is fire. We have more fire now building up more and more this week. But right as the moon comes into Sag, it is generally more, it can go either way. I've said this over and over with the moon in Sagittarius. Generally, it's more positive and uplifting and more optimistic, but it can also just show that circumstances can be super indulgent. They can be inflated for good or bad. Things can get over the top for good or bad, but it's generally a more need to kind of come out of the deep end of life and kind of come more outward into the world, be more active and passionate. It can also stir up the need for travel, for learning and teaching, and for looking at the bigger picture and the future. There's generally a stronger need for people to have a sense of humor, to have more fun, more adventure. And with the moon now aligning with this brand new Neptune here, it's picking up on this dream, this inspiration to be doing something. And overall, I think that, pay attention to that. It may not be instant for everybody. And for some people, you may not be tapped into it if it's not aligned with your personal planets. But as time goes on, we should just have an instinct on something that's building, something that's inspiring us to take action or to move forward in life with. But with all this Pisces still, it's more passive. It may not be ready just yet. So just know that if you don't know what's ahead for you, if you don't feel like you have anything calling you, just be patient. Everything is going to come into alignment, and you'll see what's next for you as time goes on here as well. But this is kind of the beginning of it all for some people. So again, it's now more fiery, more passionate for the next 2.5 days as the moon is in Sagittarius. Now the moon is being ruled by Jupiter. And that's the other thing that's about to change here. As soon as Mars gets out of Cancer, there'll no longer be a mutual reception. Well, once it gets out of Scorpio here, there's no longer a mutual reception with Mars, which is good. We don't need the moon wrapped up with Mars. So now the circumstances are ruled by this Jupiter that comes back to Gemini, data, information, media, teaching, learning. All this becomes a stronger need. Traveling, exploring, ideas, thoughts, philosophies, all kinds of things like that. Generally people become more mentally stimulated And then, of course, that Jupiter is being ruled by this Mercury, still in a bad way, but it's gotten help today. And then when Mercury leaves that Pisces, this Jupiter will be better off as well, especially once Mercury gets past Neptune. I don't think that, again, we can't look at Mercury, Neptune in the exact same way that we would say Mercury, Neptune conjunct in Pisces. It doesn't play out the same way in this new era. So we kind of have to come up with this new interpretation as time goes on here. And because we've never had this before, it's hard to find that instantly. Theoretically, yeah, astrologically, we can have some answers for it, but to truly test it, to truly see what this new era is about, it's going to take a little bit of time. And we have plenty of time for this, that's for sure. All right, so then the moon trying that Neptune, and then the final aspect is Mercury ingressing the world point by tonight. So I don't expect things just to instantly change, but it is the beginning of this change of thought, perception. Like I said, it's about ending these old stories that are outdated, that we need to let go of, so that we can think about new things. Everything that's coming into Aries, the key word is about new. And so now we've had this time of Mercury retrograde going back and forth over this spot to figure things out. And now we're back and we're ready to start looking ahead and not backwards anymore. But there's this new energy here that we're picking up on right away tonight and all day tomorrow on Wednesday with Mercury conjunct Neptune. So it can be dreamy and inspiring, but still passionate, and it can still be warlike in some cases too. But it's just something about inspiration on some new level about what's driving us to take action for the rest of this year. So people become more instinctive as well. People are quicker with their communication, and they're going to be communicating, a dream, fantasy, or an ideal of some kind, generally speaking here. And because this is the world point, it's likely talking about some important world developments around information coming out this week as well. But Mercury here, it's sharp, quick, and we start thinking more about the self again. Start thinking about what we want, our freedom, our independence, our individuality, and everything about the self. But now that Mercury is in Aries, it's ruled by Mars now, no longer Jupiter. So again, Jupiter can benefit from this change as well. We can all benefit in our Gemini area. And it still comes back to this sense of an ending, though. Even though Mercury's changed, it still comes back to Mars at 29 Cancer, being ruled by the moon. The moon here is connecting. Well, that'll be the following day. I'll talk about that on Wednesday. But, yeah. The last aspect is this Mercury, basically, for Tuesday night. But it still has a sense of some things ending this week as well with this Mars in this position and the Sun also reaching the ending degrees. So that's tonight, a big change, and we wake up with that on Wednesday, April 16, starting the day off with this new perception of things. Pay attention to your dreams on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Something could have changed, something could be new, you could be getting some new insights about things. So just be very aware. And we still have the moon here in Sagittarius. There's only 3 aspects. So the moon sextile Pluto first thing in the morning, the overnight hours basically. So circumstances are connecting to group and community and social dynamics for Wednesday or Tuesday overnight hours into Wednesday morning. So be most relevant for people in Europe, with the time being in the morning here. But it's still an empowerment to the mood and the feelings and the circumstances, and then culture and community, politics stuff comes into greater alignment, wrapped up into people's needs and feelings of what they're doing. So could connect to friends and community stuff for Wednesday in a better way. And then the sun is in conjunct to the South Node on Wednesday. So again, our primary focus and looking at the self and what we want and what we need to do and initiate, but we are connecting to this South Node in Virgo of work, service, health stuff, things of the past that still need to be purged and restructured and worked on. So the more practical daily life stuff, could be a distraction, or we're having to adjust to things that we need to take care of versus what we are focused on for what we want to do, the self, things like that, just adjusting and adapting as the day goes on. And then the other last aspect is the exact conjunction of Mercury-Neptune here. So again, it's this new way of thinking about the future, the self and the world, our perception and just our understanding of the self and the world in this new way. Now that the world has had time to work out all these changes that have been taking place in the world, now we're looking at it differently. And once this Mercury gets past Neptune, I really think we are wanting something new, and we're working with all the new in a new way, moving forward with it in a new way. But communications, pay attention to what's going on this next 2 days, even tomorrow here on Wednesday. Pay attention to the media, news, information, to see what's being talked about with this new conjunction going on, so we can get a better idea of how it's shaping up for the world. But again, it comes right back to Mars and a sense of urgency and a criticalness for a change on the world stage here. So we're going to see some big developments this week with nation states, most likely. And then deals. Deals are going to be made, more and more deals for the next 2 weeks with Venus, Saturn. As far as the markets go, they've come up a lot since that final bottom. So, if you did buy in, you're already looking good. But I'm still liking it because Venus is connecting. Venus is direct, it's exalted, it's connecting to Uranus. I still think that there's generally positive vibes for the markets. It's still going to be volatile and, up and down different days, but it's still, I think, a lot better than where it's been in the past. So that's good. All right, so that's what we have for Wednesday. Let's move this forward for Thursday. April 17, we start the day off with the moon in Sagittarius opposite Jupiter. So everything is big and over the top here on Thursday with media, communications, information, traveling. All these things are really stimulated. Beliefs and opinions are super stimulated. So people are going to have a lot of strong opinions about things here, a lot of debates, and just a lot of big communications, big information, most likely. And then the mood too. The mood could be big for good or bad. People could make a big deal about things for good or bad. I would think that this could also be a little bit of an indulgent aspect too, but keep that in check because the moon will have to run into squares with Venus and Saturn here soon. So first thing in the morning could just be showing a little bit of an opposition between people's feelings and beliefs about things versus media and data, communications and information. It's just kind of messy a little bit first thing on Thursday, it looks like. And then the moon trines Chiron, shows that people have an opening. Things could just be feeling more confident or just feeling better about the self here because the moon is in fire. It's about to align nicely with the sun in fire and Chiron there. So this is where the moon is in a better phase with the sun. However, the moon, like I said, is also, square all of these Pisces planets. And then as it comes into Capricorn, it'll be square Aries as well. But here's Mars still at this last critical degree, getting so close to changing. And it does change here. That'll be the next aspect. Mars will leave its debilitation finally and ingress this Leo, which is very powerful now. Because now that Mars comes into Leo again, it's ruled by this exalted sun. And remember, we're not going to have this for very long because the sun is about to change signs too this week. And we'll lose that exalted sun ruling Mars. Or Mars ruling the exalted sun, rather. it's a mutual reception. And it's very powerful here, but it's just not going to last. They're in a mutual reception now. The sun is ruling Leo, Mars rules Aries. So this is passionate, fiery. It's much more about bravery and courage and drama and being bold with our actions and our passion, so things really start to heat up. And right as Mars comes into Leo, it's in good alignment with this Neptune and this Aries. But we also have this moon here that's making some hard aspects from this point forward for the next couple days. From this point forward, it's going to be pretty intense. So this is where the world is getting much more passionate, fiery, active. And again, Mars is building up to that final opposition with Pluto. So again, it's not exact this week. It's going to be exact next week, but we could maybe start to see some of these indications of what Mars here wants to do. And it's basically the hero vibe, and it could be the anti-hero vibe as well, especially when Mars reaches that opposition with Pluto. But this is also a change to military plans, generally in different places around the world, different militaries, different action plans now come in. The world is so close to really starting to move forward in big new ways. It's just that Mars has to get past its retrograde shadow before we enter new territory, which is really when the world is moving forward in powerful new ways, after Mars gets past that Pluto. So we're also building up to some sort of big obstacle that we maybe all have to get past in our own way to move forward in life. What is the big final obstacle before we're more free and confident in what we're about to do? So this week is building up to that, and then the grand finale of it, like I said, by next week, it's going to show a lot of different results. I'll talk more about it next week as well, but it's going to be the true turning point. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens in the world and in personal lives as well. It's going to be more dramatic, more intense. It's going to also stir up a lot more political stuff now with Mars back in Leo, opposite Aquarius, where the Pluto is. Like I said, the anti-hero, there could be some things that pop off in the world, like, with people here. So we'll have to be careful of that, but it's still very powerful. And it's aligning with this new dream, this new inspiration that the mind is connected to by this point as well, by the end of the week here. So it's much more confident in our ability and our action plan, much more confident in making decisions about what to do and how to take action. It's much more impulsive and driven and fiery. And just again, people are expressing themselves in bold ways now that also want people generally will be taking action in ways that they want attention, they want recognition, so it's going to really heat things up in big ways. But then the moon is squaring Venus and Saturn. So the Saturn square will be the following day on Friday. So there's this opening, and there's a lot more strength and passion, and this is better for leaders of the world as well, with this exalted Sun and Mars mutual reception, no longer driven by emotions and feelings. And this is way better for Cancer now too. Now, with that said, Aries season is, always puts a little bit of tension on Cancer and the other cardinal signs. So Mercury will come into that, and then the other planets eventually. Sun has already been doing that, but it's still way better for Cancer. So if you have a lot of Cancerian planets, this is a positive turning point for you, getting Mars out of your sign. And then, Mars has been stirring up all this home and family stuff for people, and fear and in the need for safety and security, and restructuring foundational things and getting rid of things that are, causing difficulties around safety and security and home and family stuff, property stuff. So this is a big improvement. Again, it's not going to be riling people's emotions up as much. And now we just have Venus, as far as inner planets. Saturn, is at the edge there, but Venus is the only inner planet now in water. So it's not as inward anymore. It's not as sensitive anymore. Now Venus here, like I said before, Venus next to Saturn is tough love, but this is the best example of that with Venus in Pisces, because Venus is exalted and loves the sign of Pisces. So not every Venus-Saturn conjunction is the same. This is one of the better ones because Venus is strong. Now it's tough love. It's a refinement. It's about long-term stuff, long-term value, as I've said. But Venus still is more understanding for others, still more, has more empathy and compassion for others. It's more self-sacrificing in relationship for others. But I don't want you to think it's just jolly because, it's still heavy. It's still a little bit restrictive in the short term. We're not getting everything we want, like I've said, until Venus is done with all that. And by the time Venus gets to Taurus, that's when we get the good stuff, because by the time Venus is in Taurus, Jupiter will be in Cancer and we'll be past the summer dynamic that I've been talking about. All right, so Moon square Venus and Saturn in this moment on Thursday, super late. It's like the last aspect of the night, It'll be super early morning hours for other people. But Moon square Venus and Saturn, we're definitely not feeling like we have everything we want here in this moment on Thursday night. So it might be difficult to feel satisfied or content with things. We could feel a little bit restricted in something here, but yet still a strong need for pleasure and indulgences. But, this moon being ruled by Jupiter, now Jupiter being ruled by Mercury in Aries being ruled by Mars and Leo being ruled by the sun in that mutual reception. So we're not able to be as indulgent because of the Venus-Saturn that puts some limits on things, But we could still have an appetite and a big need for something here. But there's still something kind of heavy, serious, especially if you're dealing with the relationship dynamic in some way, on Thursday night. Now, the moon is also in conjunct to Uranus for the last aspect of the night. So a little bit of unpredictability could be happening on Thursday night as well. And it's pretty much all fateful, but this all comes in for the following day on Friday, April 18. So the overnight hours, the moon at the end of Sagittarius here is squaring the nodes of fate. So again, Thursday night into Friday morning is very fateful. The world's at a crossroads for whatever happens here, for good or bad. But it's heavy. There's something serious and heavy about it at the same time and restrictive about it. But then the moon aligns with the sun. And that typically shows that there is some level of cooperation and things flowing. It's all about fire at this point. I mean, we're overwhelmingly in the fire now. So it's much more outward, instinctive, passionate, bold, dramatic. Still, things can be a little bit over the top for the first, really early hours of Friday morning. But then the mood is going to really change as the moon will ingress Capricorn for the next 2.5 days. So this is where the moon is considered debilitated. It's not as comfortable, not as easy for emotions and feelings and needs and to get everything that we want. When the moon is in Capricorn, you have to work harder to feel good, to get what you need and want, generally speaking. And we do run into obstacles with that. Now that the moon is in Capricorn, it's being ruled by this Saturn from behind the scenes. So generally, the mood gets more serious from this point forward. People's emotions get wrapped up into the need for respect, achievement, career, work, goals, ambitions. All these things become a stronger need, but they're running into this new energy of Neptune on the world point, which could add a little bit of confusion going on, uncertainty going on here at first, and then some tension between the mind and thoughts and communications versus feelings of things. Mercury, Neptune says, let's initiate a dream. Let's start. We have an inspiration that's driving us now. Let's do it. But the moon in Capricorn says, you got to do it right. Take your time, slow down, have a plan. Take your time climbing up that ladder, up that mountain in a sense of success. It's not going to come instantly. And then Mercury, Neptune, and all this Aries is about the self and doing things quickly and changeable. But moon in Capricorn, again, It's for the long term. It's about being responsible and mature and not just whatever you want to do. You have to look at commitments, responsibilities, work, and all this type of stuff for the next couple of days. And this also just puts more emphasis on government things happening in the world as well. Then the moon, the moon in conjunct to Mars, and then the moon is square Neptune and Mercury. So there's still a lot of tension here on Friday morning, April 18th. But it all kind of happens in the morning. There's no aspects for the second half of the day. So it kind of sets the tone of a lot of tension and pressure. Not the best day for travel, in my opinion. Not the best day to be publishing or doing major errands or having to network and do a lot of communications with people and work and business stuff. That could be part of the tension and the problem if that could get wrapped up into the day. But if you can avoid it, wait for a better time here. The sun is also reaching the last critical degree of Aries. It can really stir up a lot of stuff here in the world with war and conflict type of stuff as well. Again, this battle of something that we have to get past on an individual level. Now, it may not be for every single person, but it's like we have to conquer something in a sense late this week and next week, and then we're free in a new way that allows us to really move forward in powerful new ways. So that's the aspects until we get to Saturday this weekend. It's going to be April 19. The moon is still in Capricorn. So this weekend probably is not the best just because the moon is in Capricorn. It's more about work and achievement and goals and ambitions. But it's in conflict again with the self and what we personally want to do versus our responsibilities this weekend. But the sun here, it has that tight square. It's not perfected yet, but it's building that square, through the weekend with Mars as well. And this is about to be the season change as well, as the sun will change signs, and that will change this dynamic. So even though sun and Mars are in this mutual reception and it's powerful, this week is the most powerful for it. And it's going to be different by next week when this change happens. So that's the change, is the sun will ingress Taurus now for Saturday. Well, it's kind of like the sun is at the critical degree of Aries all day on Saturday until the evening hours, and then we get this change. So now that the sun is in Taurus, it's a change of season, and it's a change in your birth chart. So find your chart. What is Taurus for you? Generally speaking, Taurus is about value and the material world, and Taurus is about stability. Now, the world hasn't been the most stable because of Uranus here since roughly 2018. But once that Uranus leaves this phase of Taurus, the world is going to get much more stable. And, a lot of Taurus people have gone through so many changes over the years. The only people still left in those changes are the people that have Taurus at the last 5, 6 degrees, 4 degrees of the sign. You're still going through big changes, but for most part, Taurus has gone through all the changes already. And then fully when we enter this new era with Uranus in Gemini. But now the sun is there, putting a focus on your Taurus area of life, about the material, physical world, looking at getting more grounded, more practical, looking at money and resources in new ways. But as the sun is in Taurus, it's being ruled by this exalted Venus, so it's a very powerful sun in Taurus. That's one of the best. Wherever you have Venus, if you have Taurus planets, see, every sign is different based on where the rulers are. So you can never say two suns in Taurus are going to be the same unless they have the same Venus as well in the same aspects. There's all kinds of complications. But, if you have a Taurus sun and your Venus is in Aries, much different from Taurus sun with Venus in Pisces or Venus in Gemini. Very different. So this is one of the best. It's just that, again, the value here that we're putting the spotlight on is for long-term stuff. It's not immediate gratification here with Venus next to Saturn. So we still have some limitations to the markets, to value, to things happening in financial ways, but we're going to see the results more and more as time goes on, the good results. So again, you have to be thinking long-term in this phase and not looking at short-term stuff. Now that square to Mars, it's pretty strong here. Even though it's not exact yet, it's already getting super strong. So there is a lot of friction, tension in the air, that's going to be getting stronger and stronger through the weekend and next week. So try not to be too pushy. This can be, passionate and dramatic. It can show conflict. It can show people are trying to push their will on others. So be conscious of that and try not to be overpowering in this phase. But again, with Mars and Leo, people want to be more passionate, more bold with their displays of action in a sense, so they're more dramatic. They want the attention. They want the spotlight. And this could show, some final tension for a few world leaders here as well, or just leaders in general have a little bit of a challenge this weekend and next week with the Sun square Mars. Now the moon still halfway through Capricorn here on Saturday. So now we have a lot more Earth. Now we have both the lights and Earth. Again, about the material world and the physical world. That's the priority in this new transit now. And wherever you have that in your birth chart, Taurus. All right, so looks like this is also where Mars is trine that Neptune. So we're tapping into this new inspiration that's come about. I don't think we're seeing it yet because we haven't had the Mercury cross it yet. But by this point, there's something that we're thinking about in a new way that we're ready to take action on in a new way that's inspiring us in some way. So, pay attention. It's time for action in big, big new ways now. But we have to get past some obstacle so we can do it. You know what I mean? So anyway, then we have moon in conjunct to Jupiter. So the moon is much more serious about work. It's about respect, duties and obligations, career stuff. We have to adjust to what we're hearing in the media, news, and information. Just a minor aspect. And then that's all there is for Saturday. So by Saturday night, it's mostly by Saturday night, it's that moon, Jupiter adjusting the things. Some irritations and adjustments are necessary based on what we're hearing and thinking about. All right, that's the last aspect for Saturday until we get to Sunday, April 20th. Moon is still in Capricorn, last degrees of Capricorn, first aspect. There's actually a ton of aspects here on Sunday. It's going to be a very busy day. So first aspect starts out a bit tough with the moon squaring Chiron, picking up on insecurities, vulnerabilities, emotionally something is a little bit tough. But then the moon turns into trines and sextiles with everything for most of the day until Sunday night, which changes again to be pretty, well, see, there's both. It's just a combination of both. There's easy, there's flowing, there's cooperation on some levels, and then there's this background friction and tension that is going to be there. We can't get rid of this. Sun square Mars. So it's still like an impulsiveness as well in the air. People could be triggered. People could be, again, pushy, riled up and passionate, but there's that big friction in the background, despite the moon coming into a lot of easy flowing aspects, including moon sextile Venus, moon trine Uranus, moon sextile Saturn, and moon sextile North Node and trine the South Node, kind of all at once here with this grand trine / kite coming up. So even though there's this background tension here on Sunday, there is major connections that are happening and flowing all together here in the world context of government stuff, business and work stuff, connecting to Uranus around money, plus the Venus connecting to Uranus as well on this day. This is where Venus sextile Uranus, there's value in things that are different, stepping outside the box, looking at material life, physical life, money management, plans, looking at things very differently, trying new techniques, or even making a big purchase, with something here is possible as well. It doesn't have to be just on this day. Like I said, the next couple weeks, it's a great time to be making financial commitments because everything is connecting to it in a pretty good way. So there could even be some development this weekend, Sunday into Monday, with world stuff as well, nation states, some sort of there could even be a deal by next week, but there's still a lot of friction, still some conflict in the air that we have to be aware of. But still, everything is aligning, and it's all aligned with fate and destiny. But this also suggests that we can be somewhat satisfied with what's going on, what we want and what we need. It'd be a little bit easier to get what we want in the moment here on Sunday for most of the day, especially, midday, afternoon, evening, until we run into the big T-square as the moon will change signs. But first, we get that Mercury sextile Pluto as well. And, the moon will connect to that the following day. But this is the third and final time we've had this. So world stuff connecting to politics and, group, community stuff, science and technology. The mind is being empowered. There's strong words, persuasive words, strong communications going on here that could have a transformative effect of what we hear, what's being spoken about. And then the moon will change signs and ingress Aquarius for a big mood change. Now the moon is in air. It's more intellectual, being more objective. There's emotional need to detach from things, but we're running into a conflict here with this big T-square by April 20th on Sunday night. So Sunday night is a critical night, and I would actually avoid being in social situations if you don't have to, because as the moon comes into Aquarius, it's all about the group, the community, social stuff, and it's right next to Pluto. So even though there's an emotional need to detach and be more intellectual and objective about things, there's still a strong emotional intensity going on here. But sometimes that can also show people are being extreme in their feelings and what they're doing, but they could also be an extreme detachment going on here as well. But it's still a conflict that you should be aware of. And this conflict is the last quarter moon phase of this lunar cycle where the moon and the sun are at odds with each other. The crisis in consciousness phase, but Mars and Pluto are wrapped up into it is the problem here. So it could be violent. It could be a lot of conflict. It could be a lot of tension on a stubbornness that's come in here because this is a fixed T-square. These are stubborn signs, especially with Taurus at the apex, the bull digging in its heels. So, there's something that's stuck in some way or, some stubbornness where people or situations are trying to hold on tight to something and not let it change. Something we have to work out, but it's transformative, it's intense, it's powerful, it's edgy, it's connected to money, resources. Now, this is Sunday, so it's obviously, not the market, but it's connected to community, politics, something with science and technology. And with Mars involved, it's still about action. It's still about having to take action on something that's kind of forced of what's happening here. And it's like this is happening perfectly, the sun squaring Mars right as the moon comes into this. So this is something that probably the most critical out of the whole week, I would think. Although there's other moments, but Sunday night, just realize this dynamic. And it's not like this is all day long. This is something that changes quite quickly by Sunday night compared to the rest of the day that had all these flowing aspects. It was pretty decent, including Venus and Mercury sextiles. I mean, the day seemed like it was okay despite this background tension, but then it just changes and gets much more intense for whatever reason, whatever's happening here. So just be extra cautious. Check yourself. Make sure you're not being extra impulsive or, like I said, being extra stubborn when you don't need to be. That's causing a problem here in some way. Be ready to change. Go through transformation to the mood, the circumstances that are quite intense and powerful. Even with the moon opposite Mars, I can't see how this won't be conflict. So we'll have to see how it plays out in the world. Maybe nothing happens. Sometimes that takes place, but it's rare. All right. So then, the moon is conjunct Pluto. So emotional transformation, extremism is taking place. This could be definitely a T-square of extremism in some way. So again, it could be the anti-hero, somebody, trying to do something here, but it does turn out where once the moon gets past this Pluto, it turns into the sextile with Mercury. So moon, Mercury, mind, thoughts, mind and heart, they are connecting on the same page. It's not really confusing. We're kind of past the uncertainty moment more by this point. We're more certain about things by this point. And that'll be the last aspect, moon sextile Mercury, until the following day. And there's only one aspect here for Monday, April 21st. The moon is in Aquarius, but the only aspect is Saturn and the nodes of fate are now perfectly aligned for next week on Monday. So we start things off with the moon in Aquarius is still being ruled by this Saturn. So it's an extremely fateful karmic day. This could be one of the most fateful karmic days. I don't want to say it's just this one day, though. It's kind of building up to this point, and then even next week, it's still kind of all that way, very fateful and karmic. But this is kind of the perfection of it, in a sense, and it's pointing towards Saturn, of the hard knocks of life, and what do we need to build? What do we need to structure in a new way for the long-term future? You have to look at it with Venus there as well. It's not just Saturn. Venus is going to cross over Saturn eventually, meet up with that North Node as well. So it's connected to something that's already been in process, already shaping the future, shaping the world from behind the scenes, deals. So this is about destiny and fate aligning with Saturn government, Saturn rules, authority. It's about new rules, new laws, not in every single way, but that's what it's kind of pointing towards, updating laws, rules, structures, systems that are fateful, that will have a long-term effect on the future. And with Venus there's high value here for the long-term future based on these changes that have been taking place from behind the scenes. And now this is just one of the most fateful moments next week of the last week of April here. So super important things are happening that will have a super long-term effect on the world in the future is what it comes down to. But the moon is just going through Aquarius all day. So again, there's a need to be detached, intellectual about things. People's emotions aren't just normal. People don't react just the way we think they're going to react. Our own feelings and emotions may not be, quote, normal. And friendships, community, politics, science, technology, all these things are really stimulated generally here. And this conflict between Mars and Sun, it'll take a little time to fade away. So the first half of next week, it'll still be in place and kind of separating day by day, getting weaker and weaker. So again, I think this weekend into next week is going to be the most important things happening, especially in a world context, but even on personal levels as well. So like I said, Monday doesn't have any aspects except for the most fateful karmic one. So let me just take a look ahead for next Tuesday, April 22nd. Of course, I'll be back to talk about that report. But we start things off, it looks like, with the moon in Aquarius trying down to that Jupiter. So things can start to improve. But this Mars Sun square is still pretty tight. And Mercury is getting ready to enter new territory by next week. But then, next week we have that Sun squaring Pluto, and then Mars reaching the opposition. So yeah, this is the biggest turning point right here. Still going to be a very intense, powerful week next week. A lot of force changes, force transformation, something very intense with world leader even going through a change of dynamics by next week. But this is the obstacle that we might all have on some level that we have to get through on our personal life to move forward. And then on the world stage, again, this is where military stuff is going to be amping up. It has a few different categories, including Syria. The issues of Syria were being dealt with last time Mars was going through here. The rebels came in and took over. So this is the point where can those rebels hold Syria, or will there be some big war or battle or change by that point to see who gets it for good after Mars gets past that opposition with Pluto? And then it could be, again, Mars kind of holding back, waiting for something for the rest of the planets to be ready. And now we're going to be really moving forward in big ways for the world government. And this could also talk about Russia and Ukraine and North Korea troops, because last time it was talked all about that. So again, next week I'll come back. I'll talk more about the meaning of the Mars opposite Pluto, but it could very well be the anti-hero pulling off another world event. Last time it was that CEO that got assassinated as well in New York. That was like anti-hero stuff going on. So we could see a little bit more of that. Some big conflicts, it appears, by this week and into next week. So that's what we have for this week. I still look at all this as a positive overall, because we're coming out of the most challenging phase that we've been in with all these Pisces planets holding us back and kind of confusing uncertainty. A lot of doubts, just kind of messy thinking and not being very practical and logical and rational. And so we're going to come much more into a better way of thinking about things this week and beyond. All right, so that's what I have for you folks. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching. Wish you a happy week ahead. Take good care.